In today's video, we're going to be diving deep into the history of one of the biggest empires the world has ever seen, the Ottoman Empire. This empire ruled most of what we would now call the Middle East, as well as some of Western Europe and some of North Africa from the 1300s all the way until the end of the First World War. With so much land and so much diversity within the same empire, how would it be able to survive that long? You're not going to want to miss a second of this video, so without further ado, let's get right into it. So let's look at Ottoman farming. So I'm assuming some of you know exactly what I mean by the phrase Ottoman farming, but I know there are people watching this video who are currently questioning why farming was such a big deal. And of course, regular farming is important. People need food. And just for the record, the Ottomans were excellent at regular farming. They grew everything from wheat to hazelnuts to watermelon to grapes to olives, you name it. If it could be farmed, they farmed it, as 90% of their revenue came from agriculture. But the farming I'm referring to is something much different and much more predatory, and I think a very good job of ensuring the long-term financial health of the empire. It's called tax farming, and let me tell you, it is incredibly shady. It's not quite as straightforward as it sounds, but once you fully understand the process, it's going to blow your mind and make you question every government on the planet. Next, how it worked. As I mentioned earlier, the process of tax farming is extremely predatory, but clearly it did allow the Ottoman Empire to not only ensure its long-term financial success, but it also allowed the rulers to build themselves extremely expensive and outlandish castles and palaces that only they go to enjoy with the people's money. What a time to be alive, huh? Anyway, tax farming is when the Ottoman Empire would sell the right to collect taxes to the highest bidder. So they would auction off the right to go collect people's taxes. Then, when somebody outbid everyone and won the right to collect, they would pay the Ottoman Empire an agreed upon amount and then go collect taxes on behalf of the Ottoman Empire. Crazy, right? The person who purchased the right to go collect tax revenue from the masses is called the farmer. This is why historians have given it the name tax farming. Back when it was actually in use, they called it itzizam, which somehow sounds less real and more predatory than tax farmer, which I honestly didn't know was possible. I'm sure some of you are wondering why a state would do this and how it helps the Ottoman Empire last for as long as it did. So let us get into the logistics of tax farming now. Next, why they use tax farming. Tax farming was an extremely beneficial way of retaining funds back in the days of the Ottoman Empire for many reasons. The first reason is that the bidder would have to pay exactly what the agreed upon amount for each taxation collection opportunity was worth right then and there directly to the government, which ensures security for the government. See, if the government collects funds from the bidder, the government instantly has funds to spend on architecture, military expansion, so on and so forth. And they did not have to worry about things like market crashes or natural disasters because they already have secured the funds from the farmer who bought the taxation collection opportunity. This way, the government always has money on hand and does not have to wait for taxes to come to them as they're collected, which is obviously would take a decent amount of time as there was no automatic collection or transfer of funds. If the government can get cash from the farmer and the taxpayer, then the government will ensure a steady cash flow at all times during the year. The tax farming system also encouraged trade, as the farmers being sent all over the empire. Because the empire was so geographically massive, trade was usually kept local. But because tax farmers were traveling all over the empire, people were trading with people from different places across the Ottoman Empire, thus expanding capital and wealth to every corner of the empire. Lastly, the empire benefited from this system because it meant there never had to be a bureaucracy that dealt with the taxation of the population. Leaving it to tax farmers allowed for the government to literally pawn off their job in exchange for cash, which once again saved them time and money. Well, how would this be good for the farmer? If you're a decent human being, you have probably asked what's in it for the farmer. And if the rules were followed as they were supposed to be, the tax collector only collected what he was supposed to collect, and nothing would actually be in it for the farmer. But obviously that is not how this works. After purchasing the collection rights, the farmer would take off and head to the place from which he's supposed to collect taxes. When he got there, he would then charge each person way more than they owed. But the people who lived far away from the government had no idea the exact amount that they owed. So in order to avoid any punishment, the people would pay whatever amount the farmer said. After the farmer collects the money, he would then come back to the government and give the amount he was asked to get, and he would pocket the rest of the cash he made from lying. This obviously means the farmer had the potential to exponentially grow his earnings by continuing to scam rural folks into paying him way more than they owed. While while that obviously is great for the farmer, this system obviously has a few flaws. Next up, the flaws of tax farming. While on paper this system sounds corrupt and terrible, in practice it was also corrupt and terrible, and had quite a few flaws for both farmers and the government. For starters, governments since the beginning of time are concerned with their governments having strong-term sustainable income and revenue that could sustain their empire for years and years. This system obviously cannot do that, while simultaneously delivering a quick return on investment for the tax farmer, because if the farmer paid top dollar at auction to obtain tax collection rights, then they're going to want to get a return on their investment as quick as possible, which likely means they're going to overcharge people even more, which means they'll not have as much actual money because they gave it all to the tax collector, even though this isn't all going to the government. Therefore, the economy will likely take a hit because people will be spending much less than they have. Plus, the tax numbers will drop in the next year if people do not make as much money compared to the year prior due to the greedy tax farmer taking it all. Also, having a single tax farmer collecting a whole group of people's taxes does not guarantee the government getting the money, as they themselves could flee the empire with the money. They could die on the trip to collect taxes, they could be robbed, they could lose it or spend it. The list goes on and on. But in all honesty, this entire taxation system, which is a pillar of any government, is totally reliant on the tax farmer successfully completing his task, which may not always be in their control, as living conditions were harsh, long journeys were treacherous, and war was a constant threat to everybody's life, meaning nothing was guaranteed. Finally, detailed records. Hilariously enough, even with this system in place, the Ottoman Empire began to keep incredibly detailed taxation records in the late 1400s, including as much detail as they could about any taxable service or person. This is the funniest part of the whole tax farming system to me, because if they could put this much thought and detail into keeping track of taxes and who owes what and how much each item or service can be taxed, why didn't they come up with a better, more reliable tax system? Clearly, the taxation of the people was a staple in the Ottoman economy, yet it was carried out so lackadaisically. But I guess that's why they ran the Ottoman Empire, and I just talk about them on YouTube. That's the video. Thank you all so much for watching. What's the funniest part about this tax farming system to you? Do you think it was one of the reasons for the Ottoman Empire's longevity? Whatever the case, let us know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. It's free, only take a second, and it's a huge help to the channel. Thanks again, and we'll see you all in the next video.